Welcome to Moonbeaming, a podcast about lunar living, magic, creativity, tarot, and more. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I'm so honored and excited to be here with you today. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Moonbeaming. I hope you're doing as okay as you possibly can be during this time. Thanks so much for being here. There's a few announcements before getting into the nitty-gritty of this week's show. Don't worry, they're both exciting. The first is my upcoming workshop series, Better Boundaries, is happening. It's happening next month in May. Registration is open for it. If you'd like to learn more about it, check out our website, subscribe to the newsletter where there's more. We are having a really great series that approaches boundaries from a really wide, much needed perspective. We are going to talk about practical. We are going to talk about magical. We're going to get into energy and nervous system stuff. And I know that I needed this workshop. I definitely still need it as well, because I think that we can always have better boundaries no matter where we are, no matter where we think we are. So I cannot wait to join with so many other amazing, highly sensitives, creatives, magical people, business babes to explore them together. This workshop series is for people who have boundaries, have been exploring boundaries, who are sensitives, intuitives. They work for themselves, or maybe they want to work for themselves, or simply want to recalibrate their energy at work. I cannot wait. It's the only time I'm offering it this year. So if it feels necessary, join us. And the second announcement is I get to announce a winner for our review giveaway. Every month I do the podcast. Every month the podcast is in session. I give a 30-minute reading to someone who has given us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. All you need to do is leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, sharing why you listen, what you like about the show, how it's helped you, whatever you want to say. And every month we randomly pick someone. And I was thinking the other day, wouldn't it be funny if I gave a reading to a 1-star reviewer or a 2-star reviewer? What if I contacted them and I was like, surprise? Just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Even though, wouldn't that be kind of funny? It would be like a funny comedy skit or something. I'd be so curious to see what would happen. Okay. Anywho, this week's winner is Keturah D. I'm going to spell it out loud because I'm not sure what this person's username, how it's pronounced. Keturahd. Keturah D left a review a while ago. Please contact our studio so we can schedule your reading. Okay, now onto the show. My guest today is Adrienne Maree Brown. Adrienne Maree Brown is the writer in residence at the Emergent Strategies Ideation Institute and author of Grievers, Holding Change, the Way of Emergent Strategy Facilitation and Mediation, We Will Not Cancel Us and Other Dreams of Transformative Justice, Pleasure Activism, The Politics of Feeling Good, Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds, and the co-author of Octavia's Brood and the co-editor of Octavia's Brood, Science Fiction from Social Justice Movements, and How to Get Stupid White Men Out of Office. Best title ever, right? She is the co-host of the How to Survive the End of the World podcast, Octavia's Parables, and Emergent Strategy podcasts. In this week's episode, Adrienne and I talk about spirituality and how she views it. We spoke about how her book, Grievers, came to be. She shares about how she transitioned from being a facilitator and doing more nonfiction writing to other forms of writing. So if any of you have been wondering, how do I make a creative shift? You'll want to tune in to this conversation. We talked about our favorite subject, boundaries, and Adrienne shared some tips about how to get them, keep them, and view them, and how they help her. And I end by giving Adrienne a reading mostly about home. I hope you loved this conversation as much as I loved having it. Here it is. Hello, Adrienne, and welcome to Moonbeaming. I am very thrilled to have you with us today.
Of course, I took a bite of cookie as soon as you said
that. Perfect timing.
Hi, Sarah. How are you doing?
I am well. I was hoping that you could introduce yourself for our listeners.
Totally. My name is Adrienne Marie Brown. I am a writer with the Emergent Strategies Ideation Institute. I'm the writer in residence, and I have written or edited 8 books, with a few more coming out this year. I'm really having like a productive writing life this decade. I'm also a podcaster. I do 3 podcasts, one with my sister, one with Toshi Regan, and one with the Emergent Strategies Ideation Institute. So I love being in a good conversation with smart people. And Virgo, tarot reader, doula, aspiring budding goddess. Yeah.
I love that. What lunar phase are you in right now in this time?
That's a good question. Let's see, today, I feel like I'm a waxing gibbous lunar phase right now. Like everything feels like it's just like kind of growing, almost full. That place where like you look and you're like, is that full? No, there's still more. There's still more. So, and I keep thinking, like I'm moon obsessed, as you are. And there's so much around that sense of like, oh, there's even more that the light doesn't touch. But like when you can really feel that your shadow is on, you're like I'm really moving and using the whole of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this growing celestial experience.
I love that. I read somewhere that in some traditions, in some ancient traditions, it was Virgo that was ruled by the moon. And I always think about that because it makes so much sense. I mean, we're all ruled by the moon if we choose, but there's that connection of the embodiment piece, you know, I think that like brings up really well. And I think it's just so lovely. I heard you mention, I think it was on your podcast a while ago, that you had a spiritual experience in a group where there was this golden light, and that made you want to explore what that was more. I was hoping you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've had, now it's been a few times that I've experienced this, but I was with a group of people, and it felt like the room was suddenly infused with some other aura, some other presence. And a lot had been moving in the space. A lot had been changing. Like it felt like right now is one of those portals where everyone could change. Like every single person here could go through their own simultaneous evolutionary moment. And I could feel whatever this diaphanous golden energy was, I could really feel how it moved through me. I could feel it pouring out of my hands, pouring down through my feet. And when I've like looked, I've been like, what is that? You know, like, who does anybody know what this is? You know, like asking around. And the closest explanation I've seen for it really is the way mycelial threading, it goes under and through everything. You know, the mycelium is that it's these threads underground that become, or the flower of which is mushrooms, but they're under and through and connecting everything and communicating, and energy is pouring back and forth. They could tell trees, you know, there's a mold over here. There's something dangerous, you know, there's water over here. And I felt like that. Like, I'm like, I can feel the spiritual well-being and the spiritual need in this room. And I can, we can, you know, because it felt like even if everyone wasn't seeing or expressing it the same way, that everyone also could feel that tingling up the spine, that presence of aliveness. And it felt like we could pour the energy where it needed to go. And in any room, there's places where the energy is much more needed. And I worked for 25 years as a facilitator for social justice work. And it was something I was always seeking, was like, can the room become self-aware of its power such that we can then move that power together? And sometimes they could, and sometimes it was like, no, you know, like, we're going to stay stuck. You know, I was like, that's okay, right? Stuck is also, it's, I think of it often as when babies are learning to stand up and they push themselves up. And, you know, sometimes it's like they grab for something and then they're able to cruise for a little bit, but sometimes they just plop right back down. And I feel like spiritual awakening can feel that way, especially at a collective level of like, we're up, man, we plopped back down. We're not our highest selves consistently yet. That's okay. So yeah, but that's what that was. And I really have that happened in 2019, mostly, like, where I was like holding a group most recently, where I was like overwhelmingly true. You know, I was like, I'm not imagining this. It's not just me. Everyone can feel what's happening. And a lot of what I've been cultivating during this pandemic has been feeling that. I'm in a group that meets once a week, kind of as our spiritual practice space. And we pray for each other. We'll send energy to each other. And I can feel it, you know, when someone's like, this person, like, let's bring our attention, bring our love to them. I can raise my hands up to the screen and I can still feel that same connective energy flow towards that human. And I've received long distance Reiki. I've had people where I'm like, I feel this. You know, I think science is catching up to things that Indigenous folks and witches and others have known for a long time, which is our interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say. There's the world that we can't necessarily see with our eyes, but we can really feel, you know, all the time.
For sure. In that room, what do you think was in place for folks to have that experience? What qualities, where were they at?
Yeah.
In your own perspective?
Well, I think a large part of what was happening was we were doing this series of events called Immersions, where we were like really saying, like, how do we practice emergent strategy in physical space with each other? And it was very experimental. It was very much following the creative thrust of whoever was in the room. And in that room, so we had people breaking into small groups to come up with offers. And in that room, one of the groups had a spiritual participant, basically. Like, they sat down, and every time they would sit down, there would be one empty chair, no matter what they did. And they could really sense and feel that there was this other presence there. And rather than joking it away or, you know, ignoring it, they invited that they were just like, okay, guide us, participate with us. And I've never seen a group do that before. Like, I've seen and I've heard people, you know, people have come and told me, like, it really feels like there's some other presence in the room with us. I come from movement spaces that are not afraid of engaging the ancestors as collaborators in what we're doing. In some way, it's like there's not a coincidence, there's a collaborative ancestral incidence, and there's no shame in it. A lot of times we will come and we'll start off a gathering by calling in who are the ancestors who we're asking to help. And as I've been working on my novellas about grief, I'm really sitting with that. I'm like, what is the phase of spiritual life where you're no longer in a body, but you can still be called upon to help manifest and manipulate the material world? And maybe there's that phase, and then there's a phase beyond that where you really can rest, But I love reflecting on and thinking about that because I've been in enough rooms with enough different backgrounds, the cultures. It's not like, oh, this only happens when I'm in a room with people who have the same exact monolithic spiritual practice. In fact, it's actually more common for me in rooms where that's not the case. And in some ways, people are astounded by how different spiritual lineages can meet in the circle. And there's patterns. It's like, well, we might come from a lot of places, but we all burn things. We all get in a circle. We all honor the wisdom of those who have died. And we think that we can see signs. We think that we can receive communication, So we read tarot and we read astrology and we're just listening, I think of myself as like a skeptical believer of everything. So
can relate very much. I wanted to talk about your book. Congratulations. Your most recent book.
Thank you.
Grievers. It came out recently. It's a major accomplishment.
Thank you.
Would you call it science fiction?
I would call it visionary fiction. It's or horror, a little bit of a horror apocalypse, but with love stories and stuff in it. So, and this, it's interesting. It's the first. So what came out, Grievers, is the first novella in a trilogy, and it's been a real incredible journey. I've been working on the book for over a decade. And then to come into this, it's about a virus that wipes out a city and what happens in the aftermath of that. And so I didn't know that it was going to be aligned with this pandemic, of course. So it's been a real trip to just be deep diving in this content during this time.
I was going to ask because when I read it, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure Adrienne did not write this in 2020. And the similarities, I definitely got chills, multiple times while reading, just because of the propheticness of a lot of the book. And I just am curious.
Yeah.
It almost feels like what you were writing a decade ago, 5 years ago, however long you were working through this project, was it kind of, maybe this is the wrong, was it guiding you in 2020 or 20? Like, I can't find the word, but was it
what I felt, like I definitely am in the creative lineage of Octavia Butler, right? And one of the things that she showed us with her writing was that to be a prophetic person is really just to be paying attention. That was her thing. It's like, oh, I'm just looking at the patterns of how humans behave and what we do under pressure. And if you pay attention to that, like a lot becomes clear, right? So it felt very clear to me, like, oh, if a virus was to hit that was primarily impacting Black people, there would not be the kind of quick public response that there needed to be. That feels clear to me. And then what would happen? White flight would happen. And then what would happen? And, so, and I had been living in Detroit when I first started writing it. I'd just been there for a couple of years. I ended up living there for 12 years. And Detroit is very much a character, that I think the places we're in become really active players in how we decide to survive or not survive, right? Living in the US during this pandemic has been a trip and a half, right? Because it's just like being in a place where people will politically disagree with things that could keep them alive, right? That's a very American way. And it was easy, in some place, there's parts of the book that was like, it's very easy to imagine what'll happen with this part, and then now that I'm finishing up the second novella, but everything is, I'm like watching the world continue to unfold. And so it feels like I'm pleasantly surprised by how accurate stuff was, while also being
you're all thanks, but
deeply disappointed on the level of species that I'm like, gosh, really hoped it wasn't going to be like this, So that good old phrase, disappointed but not surprised, yes,
is one that we can use. I was wondering what compelled you all those years ago to submerge yourself in grief?
Well, I think Blackness, being Black, like I feel like there was this period of time where we started to have a shared sense of awareness of how frequent Black death was and how little care was given to it. And this is like heading into what would become this age of Black Lives Matter, right? But as I was starting to notice, I'm like, this is really, you can't get your breath. You can't keep up with what's happening. And so then I was like, well, if things happen for some purpose, for some reason, if there's something we're supposed to learn from this, then what is that? I started to get really curious about like, what are Black people? What were we supposed to learn from slavery? What are we supposed to learn from this imbalanced suffering? What are we supposed to learn about our humanity? What are humans supposed to learn from the unchecked violence of white supremacy? Like, what are the lessons? And as I was contemplating all that, I was like, there's no clear answer, but there are stories that start to point a direction. For this first novella, it was really like, you have to turn inward and find your own reason for existing, because we live in a world in which tons of people don't want to see you exist. So you can't count on external affirmations or external, for Black people, it's like, there's not necessarily going to be a teacher who holds your hand and says, I believe in you. You have to find that in yourself. And so my character, is going through a micro journey of that, of just like, okay, everything is gone. Why would I live? Why does my life matter? Why do I continue? And then as we move into the next books, a lot of it is like, why form community? Like, what is the purpose of community? How do we make communities that actually serve the purpose of us becoming compatible with Earth? Which I think should be our primary concern at all times as a species, is like, it would be good to be compatible with the only place that we can live, I think. But again, these are considered radical ideas at this time, and that's crazy. So that's why I keep writing. I'm just like, well, yeah.
It's also a departure in style from a lot of your previously published work, although obviously I'm sure you've been writing in many different forms always. Yeah. And this makes me think of a lot of, basically the majority of conversations I've been having with folks in this time, which is that of change and pivoting. And so many people, whether it's they're, becoming more radicalized or having spiritual awakenings or just wanting to do more meaningful work, spend time doing things that are more in alignment with who they are, so on and so forth.
Yes.
So much is changing. I was hoping you could share a little bit about how you navigated you know, being someone who put out public work in certain genres and then made this switch?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is like, and I think this is true for almost everyone probably, is that I've always had the idea of myself as a fiction writer. So I was always like, I'm a fiction writer and I'm just taking my time. I'm taking my time. I've got to write this other thing. I'm writing this blog. I'm writing this stuff. And I think when it came time, when I was like, I have this story, I can't let it go. It keeps coming back to me. There was a way that my system was like, okay, well, just try it. You might be horrible at this. You're good at facilitation and you're pretty good at nonfiction writing, and you might be crap at fiction writing, but at least try, and then you'll know, because you can hold on to a dream your whole life. And if you don't pursue it, you never actually know, is that the dream for me? So many people, and I do this, I support so many people that I love to figure this stuff out, that I'm like, so many of us are just selling ourselves way short. We never give ourselves the chance to even try the thing that we think is our calling, right? It astounds me. So for me, I'd been writing fiction always. I'd gone to the Clarion Sci-Fi Writers Workshop and the Vona Writing Workshop, and I could feel myself, standing on the high dive, just like, I don't think I could do it, and I don't know if I think probably your listeners will recognize this feeling of like, if you have gotten good enough at something, jumping into a new realm where you might not be good at all, it's like, I want to be good immediately. Like if I'm going to go be a writer of fiction, I want to go and people are like, oh my God, she's incredible. And so that I think was the biggest, I just had to get out of my own way on all of that stuff and just write what needed to be written, what I needed to write. And so, I want to speak to I sent this story out to a number of different people, and I sent it to someone who had read one of my short stories and was like, oh, I want to publish you, send me something. And she was like, nah, I don't like this. Or, and I was like, but it's my story from my heart, and then I sent it to different friends who would be like, oh, it's good, but they never finished or whatever. And you just have to go through all of that, right? Of just like, okay, I believe in this story. I believe in this story. I believe in these characters. They're not letting me go. And Sarah, I have to tell you, I love writing fiction, right? I love writing anyway. Anyone who's in my life knows it's like, if I wake up with an idea, that's what's happening. I will go in the bathroom for 3 hours if I need to get the alone time to write a poem, or I surrender to the muse, I give myself to what wants to come through. But I just love writing fiction because it's such defined characters who are not you. And you just get to plug every experience of your whole life into building a world and a story. And what kind of observer of the world are you? That will inform what kind of writer you can be. So I really love the process because I'm a Virgo. I pay way too much attention to everything. The only purpose for all this attention I pay is that I can build these really compelling, detailed worlds, right? So it's been a blast for me. And I think there's also a way it's helped me land in that this is life right now. I think many people, I spent the first year of the pandemic being like, all right, we're paused from normal and eventually we're going to go to concerts again or whatever is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think I had to really wrestle with we're not going back to any kind of normal. This is my life. And for a writer, being quarantined at home, not allowed to go anywhere with no clubs and no anything that you can do is the perfect condition for writing, right? It's the container, it's the white room container. It's okay, you're still in this room. You're back in this room. Here you are again in the room. What's in the room? Who's in the room, right? How can you make this white room worth being alive for, worth the miracle, So, yeah.
That's beautiful. I wanted to just talk a little bit about boundaries
Yay.
because
One of my favorite topics.
everyone's favorite topic. Great to talk about harder in practice.
Very.
I'm going to assume that you've had to change your boundaries.
A lot, yeah.
And I was hoping you could share a little bit about what questions you had to ask yourself to create the healthiest boundaries for yourself, for your spiritual self, for your heart space.
Yeah. Well, Prentice Hemphill, who's my beloved friend, and Prentice wrote, boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. And that was a real, I knew back when I was writing Pleasure Activism, I knew that no and yes were deeply connected. Like it's like when I say no to one thing, I'm saying yes to another thing. I'm saying yes to something that I want. And that feels important to me, right? That has always felt important to me. But I think since becoming more recognizable for my work, more recognizable as a person, building a bigger following, I had to really change. I've been an organizer for, I've been someone who's like, I'm in movement work for 25 years. And in that space, what was always the most important to me was the equality of everyone. It's just like no one's above each other in this space. And if anything, coming into a space as a facilitator, it's like I'm the least important person in this room. Like what I'm here to do is become a part of a container, extend my energy to fill up this room and make it a lubricant, make it sticky, make it sweet, make it something that's like, I want to create a field in which people feel that transformation is possible and relationship is possible. And in some ways, the more I can get myself out of the way, right? It's just like, oh, there's a pleasant vibe. I don't know where it's coming from. It's like, yes, vibes, right? So there was never an expectation, even as a writer, there's never an expectation that you'll blow up and become any kind of celebrity. So all that I share because the first question I've had to ask myself around boundaries is how much I value myself and my time. And I can do it for others. Any of my friends, I'm like, you need to tell that person, no, block that number, blah, 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 like shut it down. And even with online stuff, it'd be like, turn off that account, shut it down. You don't have to answer those, those people don't know you. Like you cannot be accountable to every human being or bot on the internet. But then going through those experiences myself has been really different, right? Because you can be in a situation where 200 people are like, you're the best in the world. And one person is like, I hate you. And you have to really set a boundary around that. It's like, okay, a stranger who's never met me has decided that they don't like me. And there's literally nothing I can do to change that, nor is there anything I need to do. Like I saw something recently that was like, it's so upsetting to me when people I don't like me or whatever.
Yeah.
There's this feeling where I'm like, I don't know if I would like this person. I generally don't like people who make quick assumptions about anything. So why am I so stressed about this? So a lot of my boundaries have been with myself, right? That I'm like, oh, I have to set boundaries on how much of my attention I give to the unaccountable world, right? I have to, with myself, I have to be really accountable for what kind of energy I let into my creative realm, right? And one of the questions I often ask, I'm like, can I write about this? Will this be a story? Will this nourish? Is there wisdom for me in it? And if there's not, or if it's like, I've learned this already, that's not a space for me. And then small thing, like I've really pulled back from sharing my address and my phone number and like just basic stuff like that. I have boundaries now. Like I have an amazing team of people who really like love me and love what I'm here on earth to do. And that's really helpful because I still have a lot of, like I feel bad whenever I have to say no, so I have a team of people who are like, you don't even have to see that no, like,
Right.
you don't have to witness it. What are the parameters? Right. And I'm very protective now. Like, gosh, I used to just continuously work. Like I would continuously work with like little moments to sleep. And now I'm so protective of evenings. I have an early bedtime, an early rise time. I'm protective of my weekends. I'm like, what? I worked all week. I wrote all week. I need the break. I need to decompress and take a bath. And like, people fought for this, I think that's also it's always so hard for me because I'm like, organizers organized for this sustainable life and we are throwing it away, and I also have that. I'm like, what do I want to live right now? What does healthy look like right now for me? And it very rarely looks like scrolling. So a lot, like I right now I'm finishing another book. And so I'm off social media and it's just divine. It's truly incredible how quickly life just fills up with the things that are actually happening around you and people you actually know. So I have lots of boundaries around that. And I would say some of the habits I have around my writing are also boundaries in practice. Like when it's time to write, I invested in a writing computer. So I have a computer, like a laptop that has no other apps. There's nothing else on it except for what I need to write. And so I have this computer that I'm talking to you on is my event and podcast computer. It's set up with all the mics and sounds and cameras and everything. But I'm like, I don't want to have to break it down and pick it up, but I need to go sit and write on the picnic table out back, or I need to be able to write, standing in the kitchen or whatever, wherever the muse hits. So, things like that. Like, I'm like, there's tons of boundaries imbued in that computer, right? It's like that computer is a boundaried zone. And when it's time to write, I put on my phone on airplane mode and I set a timer, for when that needs to end. And it's just like, no one can reach me because I'm not an emergency ER doctor. There's literally nothing in my life that needs to function at that level of urgency. And I've learned that, the hard way. Like I've lost a lot of people in my life. And I'm like, there was never a phone call that came through where I would have been able to do something about that situation. Yeah. So it's okay. I'll get that news on the other side of finishing this chapter. But I'm learning boundaries all the time. I'm learning what it feels like inside my body, which for me, there's a tightness that happens when it's like, recently someone was like, oh yeah, this person wants your home address to send you flowers. And I just felt the tightness of like, I don't want to give out my home address. I don't want to give it to anyone. But I said, I told my team, I was like, okay, send the address, but for the future, I don't want any, this. And they were like, we don't have to do it right now. No one has to send anything to your house. And I was like, I don't want to be mean or, just say no to gifts or whatever. But it was like, no, that's your home. And in this world, you get to have privacy around it if you want to. So stuff like that, like I learn daily a new boundary. And my partner, Nalo Zidane, is like such a gift in this because she's very direct. She's like, just say exactly what you need it to be, and I definitely grew up with the like, I don't know why this is here, instead of just being like, I don't like this here. I would like this to be, this way. And she's like, we don't have to go on a labyrinth if you already know what's at the center. Like we could just go straight there. So love is a master class in boundaries, right? And yeah, I feel like I have great teachers.
When your boundaries feel right-sized, what is the energy or sensation of that?
The main thing is I feel freedom, like total freedom of time, that I'm like, there's nothing like when I look at my calendar, like there's nothing on the calendar. I'm like, fuck. Why did I say yes to that? Like, today was an interview day. And even for that, like I've really shifted the boundaries of like what interviews I'll take. So I look at and I'm like, this is so great. Like these are going to be great conversations today. It feels like my shoulders don't feel tense, right? My back feels flexible and I have space to take care of myself, which is the biggest thing. It's like now the way my life is constructed, there's time for me to swim. I swim every single day, and I'm a real athlete about it, like I'm like, it's non-negotiable, right? I have time to be hydrated. I have time to fold the laundry and put it away. There's not this sense of my needs are final. My needs are the last ones on the list, right? Good boundaries mean it's like oxygen mask first, deep breaths, and now I can go be a good Adrienne.
I love that. I wanted to ask you one last question.
Sure.
Can you remember in your whole life, in a past life, last week, a moment, an encounter that transformed you in a really beautiful or profound way?
Recently, I have like a whole set of friends, we've been going through this pandemic together and it's like 3 different group threads, recently on basically across all of those spaces, this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear came up and it was so, we were all like, I don't know. It's just like one of these white guys self-help books. I don't know. But then someone was like, no, check it out. It's like, there's that, it really aligns with emergent strategy and it really aligns with somatic commitment and it really aligns with this stuff. And I was like, I don't know. So I put it on. It's a 5-hour audiobook and it was so on point. Like it was so immediately usable. And there was stuff in there, I was like, okay, I could sit and give him some fat phobia stuff. I could help him out with, like, he's got a very fitness orientation to life. But the premise of it, which is like, instead of setting goals for how you want to change, like, what's the person you want to be? And, articulate the kind of person, I'm like, I'm a healthy person. So it's not like I have a goal to go swim every day. It's just like, I'm a healthy person. I do swim every day. Like, that's my habit. Right. And because I swim every day, my body is like really protein oriented and I really want to eat well for my, nourishing my athletic system or whatever it is. And then you have to sort of set your pattern and then you can grow the pattern. Everything I've done in my life that I'm like now proficient at or have some mastery in, meditation, facilitation, mediation, yoga, swimming, writing, every single place I decided I want to develop some mastery here. And I started out with like a 1-minute process or like a 50-word, journey. So I found that helpful because it's like, there's nothing earth-shattering brand new about it, but it just returns you to like that thing we all know, which is like Octavia told us, habit is more important than talent. Like what you do over and over again is who you become. And, even when you say that all the time, sometimes you need to hear it so that you can be like, oh, right. How are my habits? And do I have community around those? So right now I have like just a very robust community of people that I'm like, I did my meditation this morning and I did my sun salutation and I got my swim, took my vitamins. I cared for my body. That was my habit, so that has been really, I think what was so profound to me is like that it happened like everyone was all together like, okay, we've given two years to sitting on our couches crying about like, what the fuck? And now like, what are the habits that are going to help us reclaim, Maxine Waters, right? Reclaim our time from this panini press for our liberated, beautiful lives.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks for this. And thanks for the great reading. I'm going to really sit with that.
Bye.
Bye.
Before I pull cards, I did want to share some messages that came through.
Okay.
Some advice, some affirmation. First and foremost, there is this choir of applause. Mm-hmm. You've come to some place internally, it's looking like, where a lot of seeds that have been planted are now blooming, and you can enjoy those blooms, and you can also understand that the timing is divine. You can understand why certain things happened when they happened, and that is a layer of peace and acceptance and almost like new material for the compost for like what like the next kind of phases. So there's this word that came through really strong, and the word is trust. Because does that word mean something to you?
It's so good. I mean, it's just like core spiritual work for my whole life. That's all.
NBD. Yeah. It's this opening up to trust on a wider level, on a deeper level. It looks like both this union you're in, this love union, as well as something around a relocation has also allowed you to exhale in a way that feels profound.
That's wonderful.
Does that make sense?
It totally does. I'm like, this phase of my life is very much, I mean, a lot of my work has been like trusting the gift, trusting like the thing that I'm here to do is actually writing, and I don't need to argue with myself or, convince myself to do. It's just like, just let it, just trust it. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And my boo and I just moved down south. So it also felt like it opened up this psychic space to be back where my bones are from. Yeah.
Yeah. There's this beautiful cycle that happens where your sweetheart pours their energy into you, and then that ripples out. And not just in your work, but also in your other relationships. It's like a felt sense kind of thing. So it's this beautiful cycle I'm seeing, that kind of concentric circles. And that's really beautiful. And that is absolutely to be trusted. The other things are that they wanted to just share, or that I wanted to share that came up, is around the body. And that there's a couple things. There's this like energetic pulling back, this sort of hermiting, as it were. There's this thinking about your energy in a very serious way, like really being like, okay, this is a resource that I have. How am I going to use it there's a switch, it's looking like, from whereas your energy was very outward directed in the sense of, what does this person need? What do they need? How can I do this? And it was natural. It was like a natural. Now there's this other phase, I'll just say, of asking, well, what do I need? Like asking how am I going to pour that in? And it can feel a little bit foreign to your energetic body. The energetic impulse is to like go out, is to like look around, see what, that person needs, or this thing needs, or how you can help with that, how you can connect those people over there. Really allow yourself to trust that pouring into yourself, pouring into your heart, pouring into your creative process is what is needed now. That's just the cycle. It's not personal. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, you're bad or you're good or there's this or that. Like, and also they're saying like, no one's going to punish you. Like no one's going to be be bummed out. No one's going to be like, hey, you know, it's just, when you think of it as just a decision, when you think of it as just a chapter you're in, that might be easier. And then watch your impulse, right? Watch that energetic impulse. It's energetic. You're like, hop over there. No, we just gentle, like it's a child, like gentle, like, no, we're not. we're over here. We're like in the bed. We're like on the couch. Like we're in the body. So there's that. The other thing that is really clear is that it seems like you're closer to the ocean than you have been. Are you?
Yeah.
Going out there, going in the ocean, going near the ocean, singing to the ocean, being with the ocean is really beautiful. Feeling that salt water is really beautiful for you. The other thing is they're showing me something about your wrists. And yeah, so there's a couple of things they're saying is like really thinking about investing in exercising, stretching, particularly like joints, wrists. If you have the resources to find a trainer or someone who's just ergonomics, like please do that. They're also saying there's someone like a friend of a friend or like a friend of a friend of a friend who's where you are, like who's close by to work with for energy or massage.
Oh, okay.
So put the call out, you know, hey, I'm looking for, and just ask for what you need. And it's something energetic and massage related for your body. The other thing they're showing about the writing process is that it might behoove you to record and then have it translated, you know, record and then have it, like, not all the time, but maybe just exploring the different ways in which you write. Maybe you're not just only typing. Maybe you're not just only longhand. Maybe it's like a combo. Like they're saying that you have a particular process you like to do. So mixing up the process of like, okay, I'm going to use my hand, but actually, you know what, today I'm going to practice just speaking into the mic and then I'll send it out to the, whatever, what is it called? Not translator.
Transcription.
Thank you. Yeah. They're like, you can do that. Like, they're like, that can be something you can explore. But last but not least, it's about the earth, and it's about putting your hands in the dirt and gardening and being like literally getting elbow deep in dirt and reaching in and being in that energy, laying on the ground, tuning into the rhythm of the earth, you know, that is going to help your body. That's also going to help your trust. Because they're saying you can always trust the earth to hold you.
That's right. I like that.
You can always trust the ocean to take away your pain. So really like anchoring in where you are is going to be really useful as well. And anchoring in where you are with those healers, those personal trainers, those people who want to help your process and your body is going to be really useful for this time in your life.
Wow.
Does this all make sense?
Yeah, this is very resonant.
Do you want to ask the cards anything?
I think, am I in the right home for all of this manifesting? Am I in the right actual physical space?
So I'm going to pull one card for the home you're in.
Great.
I'm going to pull another card for potential for another place.
Great.
And I'm going to pull a third card because they're saying Adrienne really likes to know what to do. So what to do?
That's great. I love it. Yeah. Because I'm like, I like the place we're in now, but you know, everyone around me keeps finding these like outstanding, and I'm like, okay. You know, sometimes I'm like settling before I have considered all the options. You know?
Pick a number between 1 and 3.
3.
And then a number between 1 and 2.
2.
Okay. Okay. All right. This is really funny. So the answer is like yes, and it's both and. So the card that got pulled for your house now, you got the 9 of Cups.
Oh, that's good. That's a lovely card.
It's a lovely card. It feels like it's lovely for nesting.
Yep.
It feels like it's lovely for celebrating, rejoicing, enjoying, birthing. So it feels like enjoying the ripeness, enjoying the birth process of whatever it may be, who you are, what you're creating, so on and so forth is great. I laughed because the card that got pulled for another place in the future, you got 9 of Pentacles.
That's great.
So what's your take on the Knight?
So nine of Pentacles. Well, I mean, I love the 9s because they're both like, okay, you know, like you're moving along this journey, you're almost complete, but the Pentacles is like your material abundance, right? And it's like, you know, that feels really resonant. I'm like, any home that I'm in with my sweetheart is a home of like manifestation and ripeness and all the sweetness. But I do think there's something around like, what would it look like to actually have the physical space that met all of the needs we have? So
I think it's like you're good where you are now. And also when it's time, come fall, come early winter, it might be useful to start looking for something larger. It might be useful to start looking for something that checks all your boxes.
Yeah.
And, you know, like the Pentacles are a witch's best friend, and you use the word manifestation. So if you're going to manifest something that's more long-term, we know the Pentacles are more long-term. It might even be an investment in property. It might be something with a back house, or, you know, just something that's larger is what I'm saying. That can be that's where you're headed. That's what you're going to do. And this is really funny. The card that got pulled for, well, what to do? You got Knight of Cups. So this is a card about having a full cup. This is a card about offerings. This is a card about moving at the speed of love and poetry and flow. You know, the Knight of Cups is about love and is about moving together, you know? So maybe it's that your person isn't quite ready, or there's something coming better for them that will allow them to be ready. Maybe where the two of you are right now is really good for both of you. And something on the horizon is going, you know, again, it looks like fall might be the time to start having conversations and putting feelers out for that. But, you know, I think it's also something about being around and with and in people, like with people that you love, not just your sweetie, but like other folks as
Community.
well.
Yay.
So maybe it's like you are meeting a bunch of people as best as you can under the conditions, and that maybe start putting out feelers and talking to folks about where they are and sort of figuring that out, because it seems that's important. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, that really resonates.
This is also a reading that's like everything's good, you know, like
totally. I mean, this is the thing I keep saying to myself is, you know, there's no crisis, just honesty and love. No crisis, just honesty and love. Like really like getting out of the kind of American obsession of crisis mindset, you know, that it's like, there's always something wrong. And it's like, or not, you know, maybe things are fine. And, you know, there's still potential for more or growth
and that's that. I just think I was just having that conversation with my therapist like 2 days ago, where I have so memorized the sensation of chaos and of
Yes.
like having to fix something or solve something, or something's over there and then something's on fire over there and then this is over there.
Exactly.
That when something is peaceful, when I have stretches of peacefulness, it's quite challenging for me.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I mean, I think that's our norm right now, is like, it's been part of the interesting thing about writing this, during this period, is like, oh, this is everything I ever wanted. Like, I can just write. This is my job. It's like I keep creating crises for myself. I'm like, now it's late. It's like, it's not late. You're the one writing it. It's not done until you're done with it. That's not a crisis, So, yeah. Yep.
So it's just like, as long as you're here making these love offerings, as long as you're here like birthing, ripe with yourself, like pregnant with love, and that's all beautiful. I love that. That's our show. That's what we've got this week. Have a beautiful weekend. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll be back soon. Bye. Moonbeaming is brought to you by The Moon Studio. It is created and hosted by me, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. Additional assistance is provided by Hazel Frew. Sound art is by Will Owen. And the show is supported by the Moon Studios Patreon. Thanks so much for your support. If you like this podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, and tell a friend. It's much appreciated. Thanks for being here.